everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Dana Trupiana, and I cover infamous gangsters throughout history. If you're a fan of true crime and the lives and legacies of some of history's most infamous gangsters, you've come to the right place because that's what we do here. So I really hope you guys enjoyed both parts of the Tupac Shakur episode, and if we're talking about Tupac, you know we also have to talk about Biggie Smalls. These two rappers were absolutely and unequivocally some of the best musical artists to ever exist. Pretty much every rapper alive that talks about influences that they've had throughout their lives references the both of these guys. Imagine what they could have done if they had lived into adulthood, because let's be real, both of these guys were absolute children when they died. Now, before we get into the actual episode, I know the question is going to come up, so I do want to answer it right off the rip. I've spent my entire life on Biggie's side of the Tupac versus Biggie debate war that goes on. I grew up in New York, and until I joined the army, I had never left this little sliver of the Northeast of America. Obviously, growing up like that, I would be on Biggie's side. There's also the fact that if you watch the videos or the interviews or the movie, everything that the both of them have done, I don't know. I've had a lot of friends that are exactly like Biggie. The way that he talks, the way that he acts, the experiences that he's had, I strongly connect with that. Tupac, on the other hand, I don't know. He always rubbed me the wrong way. The way he comes off in interviews, in videos, in everything is very, I don't know. I mean, I don't know shit. But personally, he's always come off to me as the type of dude that, like, you don't want to be in a room alone with him. He seems like the kind of dude that you'd be dating and he'd be talking to and flirting with the girl on the other side of him. Just not the kind of dude you want to be in a relationship with or get a connection with. You just don't want anything to do with. I've known my fair share of dudes and they all have the same attitude and it's always how that goes. And again, I don't know shit, but it's just the way I feel. So now that we've gone through Tupac's video and we know everything about Tupac and where he was coming from, I think how he died is a pretty good indicator of that. He died because he was flirting with a car full of girls on the road next to him, even though he knew damn well there were people to come and carry out a hit against him. That doesn't seem like the kind of guy that you want to be friends with or that you could fall in love with. He seems like the kind of guy that's gonna cheat, especially since he was sleeping with his ex-wife the night before and then had a different girl there the day that he died. Now, Biggie, on the other hand, yeah, you could tell he's a perpetual flirt, and he's well known for cheating on his girlfriends and his wives and all of that. Like, I'm not taking anything away from that, absolutely. But I could also see myself being really good friends with Biggie, where with Tupac, I feel like as a woman, you're either dating him and hooking up with him, or you don't have any interaction at all with him, which is really why I always like Biggie a lot more. Now, with that being said, that's a personal level thing. Who I would want to be friends with, who I could see myself being in a relationship with. That's just how I feel about the two of them. Now, who do I think was in the right in the beef that broke out between the two of them? Tupac. Who do I feel had more of a right to be upset about everything that went down? Tupac. I just wouldn't want to chill with Tupac, okay? It doesn't take anything away from the fact that I fully believe that Tupac was in the right in this war. It's just not someone I would want to chill with, so, I mean, you know, take that for what it is. But if you ask me who do I think was right, who do I think had more of a right to the war that went on, definitely Tupac. So now that we've gone through that completely inconsequential part of it, because I knew I was going to get asked it, whose side do you take? Let's go ahead and get into the part one of Biggie Smalls. The rapper that we all know as Biggie Smalls, Big, Notorious B.I.G, Big Papa, or just Biggie, was born on May 21st, 1972 at Cumberland Hospital in Brooklyn, New York as Christopher George Latore Wallis. His mother, Voletta Wallace, was a preschool teacher. His father, Selwyn George Latore, was a welder and a politician, and he was 15 years older than his mother. Christopher grew up not really knowing anything about his father because his father left right before he turned 3 years old. So he really didn't have any memories or anything of him. He has pictures with him as a baby, but never really had much of any interaction with him. His father passed away exactly 1 year and 5 days before Biggie died, and his mom said that when his dad passed, it never really had much of an effect on him, and that makes sense. He only saw him one time in his whole life that he could, like, remember. This wasn't just a deadbeat dad that didn't come around much. He literally ghosted the family. So how could you even think that Biggie might have any feelings at all about him, good or bad? Like, it makes sense. When Selwyn left the family, Voletta got a second job, and that's how she raised Christopher. She had 2 jobs, and she just held it down and took care of the bills and took care of everything. You know how it's kind of like a trend online to talk about like how you were raised if you were born to American parents versus if you were born to immigrant parents? Voletta raised Christopher in a very immigrant parent type of way. She loved Christopher beyond measure, but she was a super helicopter mom. She was very strict, and she always knew where he was and what he was doing, to the point that when he was young, he wasn't even allowed to leave the front porch of his apartment building. Like, she did not play with him. Voletta Wallace was born and raised in Trelawney in Jamaica, and you could hear that when she talks. She has a very heavy Jamaican accent. She came to America and came straight to New York in 1968 when she was 19 years old. She came on a 14-day visa, she extended it, and she stayed indefinitely. But she didn't just forget about her home country. Voletta brought Christopher to Jamaica every summer. She said that whenever they went there, they would spoil him rotten. He would spend a lot of time with his grandfather, who he loved and idolized. While Biggie said that he never really had any kind of male role model growing up, Voletta said that that just wasn't true, because he loved his grandfather, and his grandfather was always a very big presence in his life growing up. Biggie grew up in Brooklyn in apartment 3L, at 226 St. James Place between Fulton Street and Gates Avenue. Now, this apartment is on the border between Clinton Hill and Bed-Stuy, and if you guys aren't from New York, that's Bedford-Stuyvesant. It's a neighborhood within Brooklyn, and they're vastly different neighborhoods. Clinton Hill is a very nice neighborhood. Bed-Stuy, not so much, especially during the time that he was growing up. It was on the rougher side of things. Christopher started going to school at the Quincy Lexington Open Door Daycare Center. For elementary school, he went to school at St. Peter Claver Church, and that's a parish elementary school. After that, he went to Queen of All Saints Middle School, and for high school, he would end up matriculating into the public school system, attending the Westinghouse High School. And this high school, for some reason, has a whole lot of people that you guys know that attended. Jay-Z, DMX, Michael K. Williams, Busta Rhymes, Joe Pignatano, Larry McNeil, and Theophilus London all went to this school. So it's a school that has some pretty distinguished alumni. Like, that's an amazing feat for a school. It is pretty wild, though, that Biggie would go to school at the same time as Jay-Z and Busta Rhymes. And I know Brooklyn is a very populated area, but it's wild that one high school would have such a huge roster of famous people that came out of it. I don't know about your high school, but nobody cool or famous ever went to my high school. Like, my high school has no cool names. Only bad stories ever came out of my high school, so. It was at this high school that Christopher made the honor roll. It was also at this high school that he dropped out and got on the fast track to success as a dealer on Fulton Street. Now, he wasn't allowed to hang out on Fulton Street, where a lot of the dealers and addicts spent time. He's not allowed to do it. So I think we can all see where this is going. He hung out almost exclusively on Fulton Street. The cool thing about growing up anywhere in New York, but especially in one of the boroughs of New York, is that you have a chance to be exposed to so many different cultures. So much art, so much history, different ideas, cultures, passions, everything. You're always exposed to it, and that's amazing about growing up in this kind of area. There was this jazz musician, Donald Harrison, that lived around the corner from where Christopher grew up, and he would bring him to museums and concerts. He was trying to groom him to be a jazz musician himself. When Christopher started dealing on the corner, Harrison would make him come home. Eventually, that stopped working, and Biggie got a whole lot more into dealing and stopped going home when Harrison told him to. Obviously, this is all being done behind his mother's back, but he started dealing vegetables, and then would later move on to the thing that is the sound of a whip makes. He made a whole lot of money, and he would stash the money that he made in a backpack on the roof of his apartment building. And that's something, you know, if you ever watched the movie Biggie, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's an amazing movie. I've always loved that movie. Though he got really heavy into dealing, the days at the museum and going to concerts and listening to jazz wasn't completely wasted. It would have a heavy influence on the music that he would make later on in his life. Now, it's no secret that he did deal, and everybody from his block confirms that that is the case. But a lot of people that are from the same area that he's from say that a lot of the stuff that he rapped about just wasn't true. They say that he never robbed people, even though he said in interviews that he did rob people. A local resident did an interview with the New York Times, and she said, "Find a woman who says he took her purse, and someone who says he stuck a gun in their face. He was no gangster." In other words, she's saying like, oh yeah, if it's true, find someone that says that happened. He never robbed anybody. He never stole a purse. He never did any of the stuff that he said he did. He wanted to come off as a dirtbag. He wanted to come off as a thug. He was not that kind of thug. Like, he was a small time dealer on the corner, sure, but he wasn't doing that stuff. And even the police agreed with her. They said that he sold small amounts on the corner. They said he never got heavy into the drug game, just dealt some small amounts, and he never did the shit that he rapped about, robbing, stealing, all of that stuff. The police were positive that he never did any of that kind of stuff. So while we're talking about the police, let's do a quick rundown on his criminal history, because I'd rather just get it out of the way all at once instead of just going over it as it happens, because he's been arrested a lot of times. So we're just going to go through it all at once. He was arrested in 1989 on a weapons charge, and he got out of jail without any jail time. But he did get 5 years of probation. Within the first year of being on probation, he was arrested for violating that probation. And that's not really a surprise. Biggie would publicly say that he kept 2 9mm under his bed at night, so it's easy to see how he would violate that probation. He was arrested again 2 years later in 1991 at 17 years old, this time in North Carolina, and this time it was for dealing. Now, up until now, he hadn't done any time in jail, and he wasn't sentenced to jail for this charge, but according to some sources, he did 9 months in jail while awaiting bail. And I say according to some sources because this one's a little weird. If you read up on it, there's a lot of sources that say that he sat in jail for 9 months because he was awaiting bail. Never said anything about the fact that he was sentenced to any kind of prison sentence. Just that he was arrested but not sentenced, and he had a bail and he couldn't make it, so he waited to make bail for 9 months in jail. The weird thing about that is that Voletta did an interview and she made it very clear that he only spent a few days in jail for this. When he was a kid, Biggie had gotten a settlement in a lawsuit against New York City after he fell and he broke his foot falling off of a public bus. He got a $90,000 settlement, and she put that aside. She looked at that as his money. She never used it for bills. Even when they struggled, that $90,000 sat in the bank. And when he was arrested and sitting in jail waiting on bail, she only took a few days to get the money out of the account and get him out of jail. So I'm not really sure. Maybe this 9 months that sources talk about was actually a sentence that he got, or maybe he never did that 9 months at all. I don't really know. Like, Voletta seems pretty legit. I don't think she's lying about this. So it's weird that most sources that you see say that he did 9 months in prison, but she says that that's not true. And she never even brings up the fact that people said that he did time. She just brought up the fact that she got him out immediately. On January 8th, 1995, he was arrested at a nightclub in Camden, New Jersey, for the assault and robbery of Nathaniel Banks, a music promoter and the friend of a concert promoter. Voletta said Biggie wasn't even there, that the show was canceled, he didn't go, a fan got upset, and that's how it all started. Obviously, this was something that Biggie hid from his mother, though, because he lost the civil lawsuit and he was ordered to pay $41,000 plus $1,700 in medical bills to compensate for Banks's broken jaw in whatever dispute broke out between them. So yeah, Voletta says that never even happened. He wasn't even there. But you don't just lose a court case because somebody says you were there. Like, he was there. He just hid it from his mom. On March 23rd, 1995, he was arrested after leaving the Palladium Dance Club in Manhattan after he assaulted 2 fans. So let's talk for a second about what exactly went down there. So it's the night of March 22nd. It's around 4:30 a.m. So now technically it's March 23rd, 1995. Biggie's standing outside of the Palladium at 126 East 14th Street, and he's standing there minding his business. He's at this club tonight because his wife, Faith, had just done a performance there that night. And there's not really much clarification on exactly what went down here. But what we do know is that 2 fans approached him and asked for an autograph, and nasty words were said between the 2 groups. There's Biggie and his group, there's the fans and their group, and nasty words are said between them. They didn't get their autograph, they got into a cab and they took off. And Biggie followed, yelling that he was gonna off them. When the cab got to Union Square West and 16th Street, they got stuck at a red light, and Biggie and his friend caught up with them. While they were stopped, Biggie took a baseball bat and blew out every window on the taxi. Then they pulled out one of the fans and punched him in the face. Biggie was arrested alongside his friend Damian D. Rock Butler, and both were charged with assault. He ended up pleading guilty to criminal mischief and 4th-degree harassment, and still walked away with no jail time, only 100 hours of community service. In August of 1996, he was arrested at his house in Teaneck, New Jersey, after police seized 50 grams of vegetables and 4 illegal auto weapons, including a submachine, several semi-automatic handguns, and a pistol with laser sights and an enlarged clip, and a huge amount of ammo, including hollow point bullets. And this is all taken out of his townhouse. The townhouse is located at the Courts of Glen Point condominium complex, and police would end up staking out the house. They raided it, and they arrested Biggie along with 7 other people. The 7 other people that were arrested there were charged with disorderly conduct. So originally, because there's really not much clarification on what happened. How did the police gain access into his house? It just doesn't even make sense. So because those other 7 people were found guilty of disorderly conduct, I was thinking maybe there was a house party that went wrong, but apparently it wasn't even that. The police officers claimed that they were checking out a parking complaint in the neighborhood, but I still don't understand. I don't understand how you go from randomly checking out a parking complaint to raiding somebody's house. It's beyond me. It makes no sense at all. And Biggie said the same thing. He said there's no way they were there checking out a parking complaint. That's absolute and utter malarkey. On September 15th, 1996, he was arrested one last time for possession because he was eating vegetables outside the Fulton Mall in Brooklyn, and police came up on his car after an anonymous tip had been made. So somebody called the police and said, oh, there's somebody doing this outside the mall. And they showed up and they arrested him. That's 7 times in all in his short 24 years of life that he would be arrested. And not one time did he actually serve any time in prison, unless that 9 months that everybody talks about was a sentence. But I'm really unclear on that, so I can't really say either way. So, as I said, it was a lot easier to just go through all of his criminal history at once instead of trying to sprinkle it throughout the video into the places where it would have happened. So now that we've gone through the whole criminal record, let's rewind back to Biggie as a teenager. Christopher Wallas started making music as MC Quest when he was around 17 years old. His earlier work had a lot of undertones of that jazz, blues, and reggae influence that he had grown up with. He became well known for his music as early as 1992. He passed his demo tapes around in Brooklyn, and the Culture Lion on Fulton Street would have his cassette tapes for sale. So Brooklyn really knew who Biggie Smalls was way before the rest of the world caught on. And he was really shy, his whole life. He had a lazy eye that he got made fun of for, and he was a lot bigger than his peers, which had him getting made fun of by his classmates and teachers alike. Even when he became a celebrity, he was super shy. He was shy, withdrawn. He didn't really have the rambunctious, outgoing personality that a lot of celebrities have. He wasn't obnoxious. He was just quiet. And say what you will about him being shy and withdrawn, but that doesn't mean that he just took the bullying that he received lying down. He didn't. He got into it with a teacher once, and the teacher said something along the lines of, some people in this classroom are gonna end up being garbage men. He came back at her with this quote: a teacher makes a starting salary of $22,500. A garbage collector starts at $29,000. You said some of us inside here are gonna be garbage collectors, but we're gonna be making more money than you, so that's cool.
You're actually smarter than you look.
Mr. Weber, yesterday you said I was gonna end up a garbage man.
That's right. If you keep cutting class, it's exactly what you'll become.
Well, I found out a teacher makes $24,000 a year, and a garbage man makes $28,000 a year. I'm gonna make $4,000 more than his dumb ass.
And if you're from America, you know what Big Brother is. It's like a community organization, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And he was a big brother. Even after he grew up, he got famous. He would always come back to the block and he would hang out with the kids that were on the streets. He would grab kids that were dealing on the corners and make them a part of his entourage. And he really worked to try to get kids that were in the same position as he was growing up and get them off the streets. Growing up as a kid, he was a lot bigger than the rest of his peers. And because of that, he got the nickname Big. And that didn't change when he grew up, hence Biggie. When he was an adult, he stood at 6'1" and 395 pounds. He could have been a freaking linebacker. Like, he was huge. And being tall, big, and intimidating wasn't a bad thing for him. He wanted people to fear him. He wanted to be intimidating, and it worked. His size alone had him being intimidated. Now, as a kid, again, his mom was a preschool teacher, so he was really able to do whatever he wanted to do until his mom got home at 5 p.m. So he ran the streets, he did whatever dirt he had to do. As long as he was home by 5 p.m., by the time his mom got off of work, he was good. Biggie had a pretty decent sized group of friends when he was growing up. A few of his friends were Lil Cease, or James Lloyd, C. Gutta, or Suif Jackson, Chico Del Vec, D-Rock, or Damian Butler, Lil Kim, or Kimberly Denise Jones, and last but not least, Ollie, or Roland Young. And Ollie was Christopher's best friend growing up, and Ollie would introduce him to all of the bad things in life, hustling, dealing, every bad thing that he would ever get into was after Ollie introduced him to it. He started yelling out the term Junior Mafia at his shows, and nobody knew who the hell that was. Nobody knew who he was talking about. And they were like, who are you talking about when you say Junior Mafia? And he's standing there and he's like, you? Like, so it turns out it was a reference to the big group of friends that he already had, and pretty much everybody I just listed was in Junior Mafia. That story comes from Biggie's mom's POV, so who knows if that's how it really went down. I kind of don't think so. There was a few different musical groups that came together to make this group, but the story that Biggie gave his mom was that, like, he was just yelling out Junior Mafia, and he just made up this name for his group of friends, and they didn't know it, and then they just became Junior Mafia. Junior Mafia was originally a bunch of different groups that would just come together to be one big group. You've got the Sixes, or 666, which was Lil Cease, Chico, Nino Brown, Bugsy, or William Bugs De La Rosa, and Capone, or Kiem Holly. And do you see what they did there? The Bugsy and Capone thing? I think we can see where the Mafia moniker came from. The next group that was in Junior Mafia was the Snakes, Larceny, or Antoine Spain, and his cousin Trife, or Ray Sean Spain. MC Klepto / Kleptomaniac, or Terrence Harding, was a solo act, as was each of the Lils, Lil Kim and Lil Cease, and they all came together to form Junior Mafia. Biggie would say that Mafia was actually an acronym, M.A.F.I.A, Masters at Finding Intelligent Attitudes. Junior Mafia released an album called Conspiracy in 1995, and that album would debut as number 8 on the US Billboard Top 200 chart, and it would eventually be labeled Certified Gold. The single that came off this album, Player's Anthem, featured Biggie, and the single itself went gold. Another single coming off this album was Get Money, and that was performed by Biggie and Lil Kim, and it would eventually be remixed into Getting Money with Lil Cease, and that single went platinum on its own, and that one created the career of the Lil Kim that we know and love today. The group would kind of fizzle and die after Biggie died. A few of the members tried to release an album after Biggie died, but the album didn't really reach the heights that it did when Biggie was alive and on the album. Biggie had told reporters that he planned to retire from making his own music in 2000, and his whole plan was that he was going to manage the career of the members of Junior Mafia after he stopped making music himself. But since he had died, only the Lil twins, Cease and Kim, were actually successful in creating solo careers. The rest of them kind of fizzled and burned. The group was done absolutely no favors by the court rulings and Lil Kim going out and calling Junior Mafia snitches, and Kim and Cease going to jail over it. Also, D-Rock and C Gutta pew-pewing Capone outside of the Hot 97 radio station headquarters. But that's a whole different episode for a whole different day. Now, one of the friends that I mentioned that wasn't a member of Junior Mafia was Ollie. Ollie's uncle, Carl Bazemore, or I-God as he went on the streets, was a big-time dealer in New York, and Ollie would work for him as a kid, and he pretty much was a dealer for I-God. On June 17th, 1992, stuff went down between Ollie and his uncle. It's kind of unknown exactly what happened. If you listen to the New York Times, a man named Hassan Bullock walked into a bodega and randomly started opening fire on Ollie and his uncle. The cashier at the bodega pulled out a .357, and 4 additional people were caught in the crossfire. They were dealers. Dealers get offed. It happens. No big deal. Wasn't even really followed up on. But then a documentary comes out, and the documentary claims that actually Ollie's uncle Carl opened fire on Ollie, and the uncle took Ollie out himself. And then the cashier at the bodega pulled out a pew-pew and took out the uncle, and Hassan Bullock and the 3 other people were just random bystanders and had nothing to do with absolutely any of this. So again, it's completely unclear what the actual story is, but those are the 2 stories that have been made public. Either way, losing Ollie was a pretty big deal for Biggie. Like, that really had an effect on him. It was one of those moments for him, like, I have to live my life to the fullest because who knows when something is gonna happen. I need to start living it, not just being on the corner and slinging, I gotta do something with myself. All of his friends kept telling him that he needed to make a demo and start promoting himself as a rapper. But he was just really into the dealing and making money at the time. He just was obsessed with making money. And he didn't see a way to make a significant amount of money by making a demo, so he just didn't do it. But after everybody kept pestering him, he decided to finally make a demo in his friend's basement. The demo was done in only 1 take. It was a complete freestyle. Like, the entire demo was a complete freestyle, and it had a super raw feeling to it. He made the demo with his friend DJ 50 Grand, and DJ 50 Grand would hand his demo over to Calvin LeBrun, or Mr. C as he went by. And Mr. C was getting ready to go on the road with Christopher's favorite rapper, Big Daddy Kane. Mr. C is a DJ producer, so when 50 Grand gave Mr. C Christopher's demo, the demo was titled Microphone Murder, and Mr. C said that he would pass the demo along to the Source magazine. Source magazine is kind of like the Rolling Stone of that era. Like, anybody in music aspired to be in Source magazine. It was a big deal. Source magazine put him in the unsigned hype section of the magazine. The music editor at the Source, Selwyn Seifu Hines, asked Biggie to join a recording project which would include the best unsigned artists that the magazine had discovered. So, and this is not something that the Source actually did very often. This was actually a one-off. So when they started to put together this event that was just kind of a montage of the best artists that they had discovered, obviously they reached out to Biggie. Mr. C hired a photographer to do a photo shoot for the magazine, and Biggie did the photo shoot with 50 Grand. This recording was never released, and this little photo shoot and demo that they put together never really went anywhere or did anything. But that doesn't mean that it was for nothing. A music manager for a record label called Uptown Records regularly called the Source to see if there was any new material that they had or any unsigned artists that he could get his hands on. And this music manager reached out to the Source as usual. This, at the time, small-time up-and-comer at Uptown was named Sean Combs, or as he would later come to be known, P. Diddy. When Diddy called the Source and asked if there was any new material that they had or any unsigned artists that he could get his hands on, Christopher's name and his demo was passed along to Diddy. Diddy said that after he heard the demo, he thanked God that he found him. He said that he listened to the demo over and over again for hours and hours at a time. He knew as soon as he heard the demo that Biggie was going to be the next big thing, despite the fact that he said that Diddy looked like a liquor store robber. And instead of trying to veer away from that, he decided to lean into this dangerous look. He marketed him as a rap don, and he had him leaning into the Italian mafia meets hood persona that they were building specifically for Biggie. Voletta did not like this. She said, "I figure if I ever met Puffy, I would strangle him." Together, they would put together the first song that would come out with the two of them working together called Party and Bullshit. This song was made to be part of the soundtrack of Who's the Man? So I want to stop here because in Tupac's episode, we went through the whole story of his label head, Suge Knight. I want to do the same thing here with Biggie's episode, so let's stop here and go over the life and legacy of Puff, or Sean Diddy Combs. One thing that I do want to mention before we get started on Diddy is that while Suge has already seen his day in court and is sitting in jail for a long jail sentence, Diddy is currently in the process of going through his own court proceedings, and there have been some seriously wild stories to come out on Diddy. Everybody in America knows who Diddy is, right? Okay, but what do we really know about him? If you're anything like me, you've heard the peripheral facts. Like, I don't know everything there is to know about Diddy. So let's go a little further into exactly who Diddy is and a little bit more of what he's done. So I've heard about the things like where he pew-pewed someone at a club with J-Lo. I heard that he dated and abused Cassie, that he tortured her in some serious ways. And I've heard the FBI raided his house and they came out with like hundreds of bottles of lube. That's really all I know. I don't know very much. I also heard that he blew up a dude's car. I heard that he had something to do with a few big celebrity deaths, but I haven't really looked into how. And I've heard he's done a lot of essaying of a lot of people. I've also, at the same time, heard that a lot of these charges popping up are lining up pretty closely with him opening his mouth about a few things. And if you look at other people, Orlando Bloom, Kanye West, the list goes on. It just seems like certain people tend to go crazy when they start talking about things they're not supposed to talk about publicly. So let's take a deeper look into Diddy and exactly what he's done, what he's being accused of, and we'll decide together what we think, okay? Sean Diddy Combs' mom, Janice, groomed him for success pretty much from the moment he was born. His dad, Melvin, died when he was young, and he often talked about how much he missed having a father figure. His father died when he was a kid, and he was a dealer, and he was always really against people being dealers. He didn't like people dealing around him. And we'll go over that in a little bit in the Biggie episode. Probably the next part. I doubt we'll go over it this part. Diddy's career started in college. He threw a party at the City College in New York City. 8 people didn't make it through that party because he didn't do crowd control right, and it turned into a whole fiasco. He started working at Uptown Records when he was 19 years old. He helped Mary J. Blige make a huge song, and he would work with a bunch of different artists, and he would help the artists to kind of get their style down and develop who they were going to be professionally. He made it to the height of Uptown's national director of A&R. In his early 20s, he started his own record label after being fired from Uptown Records. According to him, he was fired because there was like a multiple alpha dogs in one pack kind of situation. And when he opened his own label, Biggie was the first successful act that he would sign, with the second act being Biggie's future wife, Faith Evans. Diddy, as evil as people say that he is, and I believe a lot of it, but as evil as he was, he doesn't have the same coming up story as Suge Knight has. He didn't hang people off balconies. He didn't take baseball bats to label heads' offices to get his hands on them. He and Biggie were just really good friends. He found Biggie from word of mouth. He stuck by him all the way up. He performed on songs and videos with him. He helped him build his career from the ground up, and he even appeared on screen with him multiple times, which, yeah, for sure, self-serving, like, not the greatest, but at the same time, you're also putting your own reputation on the line and pretty much rolling the dice on your act. Like, if Biggie were to flop, that would come off bad on him too. So it's a gamble. You could come out really successful, because you helped your artists come up, or you could fall on your face if they do. I didn't look too far into this, but I do want to mention it. There's a thing called flavor camp, and in this flavor camp, it's pretty much Diddy would have young kids come live with him to work on their professional careers. L.A. Reid would send Usher to flavor camp as a kid. Usher would end up sending Justin Bieber, and people hate Usher for this. Because from the outside looking in, it looks like Usher was badly abused by Diddy during his whole time at flavor camp. There was this famous joke where Diddy told Kevin Hart that he used to wrestle Usher in the morning for Frosted Flakes. Usher came out with some very advanced songs for his age, and people didn't like that. And it looked from the outside looking in like he was being abused repeatedly by Diddy. And while that's horrible, it's even more horrible to serve up another young boy, aka Justin Bieber, who's supposed to be in your care, to undergo the same exact abuse that you underwent. And you know exactly what the damage done was because you underwent it. So a lot of people got really angry and upset with Usher for this. So even with all of this weird shit going on, it seemed like Diddy was ruling the world at the height of his career. He was well known for the lavish parties that he threw. Anyone was at these parties. He was nominated for 14 Grammys. He won 3 Grammys. He has brands in clothing, alcohol. He's done reality TV. He's acted in movies, acted in TV shows. He has legit touched every facet of the entertainment industry. Diddy's real troubles began in 2023 when, on November 16th, he was served with a civil lawsuit from his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura. The lawsuit had some bombshell accusations in it, including that he, along with other celebrity friends, engaged in sex trafficking, human trafficking, sexual assault, gender-motivated violence, sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and a hostile work environment. Now, while Diddy denied the claims in this lawsuit, he came out and said, absolutely, categorically, no, I didn't do any of this stuff. It was settled quickly. Only a day after this lawsuit was filed, it was settled out of court. Yeah, Diddy denied that it ever happened, but within a month or two, CNN came out with some footage of Diddy just obliterating this girl in a hotel room. And the video footage is absolutely wild, and Diddy never had any plans for this footage to come out. So when the footage comes out on CNN, Diddy comes out and makes an official apology on Instagram, and he takes accountability. He says that, he did it, he's sorry, he has no excuses. But this is 2 days after the footage comes out, and those 2 days were spent just completely denying that any of it happened. In those 2 days, he pretty much called her a money-hungry liar, and made her seem evil for filing the lawsuit in the first place. So, yes, his apology seemed genuine and it took accountability. It hit all the right parts that it was supposed to hit, but it was a little bit too little too late. And once people were able to see that in front of them, the whole thing changed. Everything changed for Diddy. Even though this lawsuit was ended very quickly, it only ended up lasting a day, this lawsuit was the beginning of the end. It seemed like everything went from 0 to 100 real quick for Diddy. Everybody's favorite hip-hop artist, one-time best friend of the beloved Biggie Smalls, and best friend of guys like Jay-Z and Will Smith, turned instantly into the big bad wolf that lurks in the night, essaying any woman in his path, offing once-loved celebrities, and setting explosives in well-known artists' cars. And it literally felt like it happened in the snap of a finger. It happened overnight. If you blinked, you missed it. He went from this god to this devil in a minute flat. As soon as Cassie spoke out, a flood of people followed. Dozens of people came out of the woodwork to make even crazier allegations. Every evil you could ever think of, Diddy is being accused of it. And the accusations flew. Combs' house was officially searched on March 25th, 2024. In the search, there was weapons, ammo, drugs, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant that was seized out of the house. Another lawsuit was filed on September 11th, 2024 by Dawn Richard, a member of Danity Kane. This lawsuit accused him of sexual battery, sexual harassment, false imprisonment, and a slew of other charges. Diddy was officially arrested on September 16th, 2024. And everybody knew it was coming since December of 2023 when Cassie filed her civil lawsuit, but this is a huge moment, the moment that he was actually officially arrested. He pled not guilty to 5 counts ranging from racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, these 5 charges alone could put him in jail for the rest of his life. But honestly, looking at it from the outside in, since Bill Cosby is sitting his happy little ass on his living room couch chillin', I think we can all comfortably assume that even if he is found guilty of these charges, absolutely nothing is ever gonna happen. Like, they'll put him in jail for life, and then a month later we'll hear that he got out. But as soon as he was behind bars, the next day, he was hit with an indictment that was much larger than the original 5 counts that he was arrested on. This indictment included accusations of him creating and running a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. These charges became even more widespread in January of 2025, and the indictment would include new victims, and it would date criminal charges back even further, all the way back to 2004. And at this point, I feel like this is when Diddy kind of became a meme. Prosecutors came out and made statements that Combs had perpetrated decades of abuse and coercion against women and others in his network to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. They would also say that Combs would orchestrate extended, drug-fueled sex performances called freak-offs between victims and sex workers. So now, this trial is going on right now, as we speak. Like, they're putting the jury together right now. There's testimony being made, and Cassie is expected to testify as early as tomorrow or the next day. Honestly, once this whole case is wrapped up, I'll probably do an episode on Diddy overall, but I can't until the case is wrapped up. I need all the information on the case before I can do anything. But what's going on here is absolutely crazy. Like, this is gonna turn out to be the trial of the century, and I can't wait to see what kind of crazy shit comes out in this testimony. So let's get back to Biggie, and we'll keep touching base back on Diddy throughout the whole story, but we're gonna go back to Diddy now that we've gone through the crazy shit going on with Diddy. So now, picking back up, they had just made a song called Party and Bullshit. It was the first song that they put out together, and after they made this song together, Puff would introduce Biggie to Mark Pitts, who would become his manager. And Mark Pitts was his manager forever. So now that the song Party and Bullshit had come out, Biggie starts working on the album Ready to Die. Now, fun fact about this record, the baby on the front of the record, that super famous CD cover that everybody thinks is Biggie, the kid on the cover is actually Keith Roy Yearwood, and he was paid $150 for appearing on the cover of one of the most famous albums to ever come out. While Biggie's making this album, his girlfriend Jan got pregnant. She gave birth to Tiana Wallas on August 8th, 1993. They never got married, and they really didn't even date for that long, but Biggie remained a huge presence in his daughter's life for the rest of his life. 1993 was a really rough year for Biggie overall. In March of 1993, while Jan was pregnant, his mother was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, and she had a mastectomy on her right breast. This really messed with Biggie, so much so that the mother that he was just like so close with, they had such a special relationship and such a huge bond, he didn't even go to the hospital to visit her while she was having this surgery. But he would talk in interviews about how he would take care of her afterwards. So when she came home, he was there, but he didn't go to the hospital to see her. Halfway through recording Ready to Die, Puff was actually fired from his label at Uptown Records. When this happened, Biggie took this as like see, I told you something was gonna go wrong. There's no way that this could work out for me. Something always goes wrong. He had always been waiting for the other shoe to drop. And when Puff was fired from Uptown, this was the confirmation that he needed that, of course, something was going to go wrong. This is me. Of course, it was going to go wrong. So when Puff was fired from Uptown, Biggie decided that he was going to take Jan and his new baby and they were going to move to North Carolina. Jan had family in North Carolina, and the bags that Biggie was selling on the corner for $5 was selling for $20 in North Carolina. So it just made more sense for him to go there. He felt like he'd make more money there. They had a place to stay. It just made sense. Well, say what you will about Diddy, but one thing about him is he is not down with that game. His dad died when he was 2 years old, and he died when he was out on the block selling. And he didn't want to see Biggie go down the same way that his father went down. So he gave him an ultimatum. Get down fully with the music or get out altogether. After being fired from Uptown Records, Puff decided to start his own record label, and Biggie was the first artist that he would sign to this new label. Biggie decided to come with Puff onto his new label after Puff offered Biggie $25,000 to come with him onto his new label. This new record label? Bad Boy Records. Soon after that, he hooked Biggie up with another artist on his label, Mary J. Blige, to record a remix of Real Love. Then he would go on to be on the album called Blue Funk by Heavy D and the Boys in 1992. Biggie would work again with Mary J. Blige pretty soon on a song called What's the 411. He did this a lot. He hopped on other artists' songs and he would do remixes as part of their songs. He would end up working with some huge artists this way. Some of them at this point were Nene Cherry, Supercat, and then he would go on to work with LL Cool J and Busta Rhymes to make Flavor in Your Ear. And that song would reach number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it would last as number 1 on the rap charts for 3 consecutive weeks. Biggie got some papers in the mail from the original Biggie Smalls. The original Biggie Smalls, Calvin Lockhart, sent him a letter saying that if he continued using the name Biggie Smalls, Lockhart was going to sue Wallas for everything he had. So that's what caused him to rebrand to Big or Notorious B.I.G. And that's how he signed Ready to Die. Lockhart was known as Biggie Smalls because he starred in a 1975 movie called Let's Do It Again. In this movie, his character's name was Biggie Smalls, a gang leader, and that's where Christopher Wallas got the idea to use Biggie Smalls as his own name. When Christopher became more famous than Calvin got butthurt and he sent a letter and he sent a cease and desist. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to go down in history as the person that fought Biggie in his rise to fame. Like, is that really what you want to be remembered by? But, I mean, you know, whatever. To each his own. Now, even though Biggie started going by Notorious B.I.G. at this point, and he told people, like, do not call me Biggie Smalls, we're going Notorious B.I.G. I'm going to continue calling him Biggie just because it's way too many syllables to say Notorious B.I.G. So we're going to continue calling him Biggie, even though from this point out, he's going by Notorious B.I.G. Biggie said that the big B.I.G. in Notorious B.I.G. was an acronym for business instead of game. And that's why he used it. All right, so with Ready to Die about to come out, I think we're going to wrap up part 1 of Biggie. Thanks so much for watching. Join me next week as we continue to go over Biggie Smalls' musical career, his accomplishments, and the ultimate demise of the rapper known as Biggie Smalls. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things, and I'll see you next week. Bye.